Welcome everyone to the latest YouTube Hangout, the February Hangout. Thanks everyone for joining me, and of course there'll be many of you watching this afterwards, posted on the channel, but of course many of you are joining me live, and it's great to see you. And of course, if you have any questions for me, then please do write in on the chat. I've got my chats on my other computer over here. So if you've got any questions for me, do fire away. And basically, let me tell you what I'm going through this time. Instead of a whole series of puzzles, what I'm going to do is I will, sorry, I'm just hopefully solving a few technical problems. I think we're there. Okay, we're on and running. Very good. Instead of giving you a whole load of puzzles to look through, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through one complete game. And this is a very famous game played by Vasily Ivanchuk, because a lot of people on the channel are saying, well, they would like me to go through games from the very beginning. And sometimes I have time to do that, but sometimes I don't. It's as simple as that. It's no ideological objection to starting from move one. It's simply a question of time. But in this Hangout, we have time, so I'm going to go through a whole game. So I can see loads of people that are joining me. I'm looking at the chat over here. Hi, folks. Hi to everyone. I can see already we have people from all countries all over the world, and I'm always very pleased to see that. So before I start, and there are still lots of people still joining us, so I'm just going to have a little slurp of tea before we start. And then we'll get into this game. Oh, we've got Dario Martin Hernandez. Greetings from Argentina. Greetings to you, Dario. Oh, that's great. Maybe you're the first. We've got Rahul Verma from India. Great. We have Thomas Braun. I'm guessing he's somewhere in Germany, Austria, maybe. Yeah, like I said, great to see people. And I won't start yet because we've still got a few people. I can see the room is filling up. Greetings from Germany, yeah. We've got Ivan, Irish Egypt here. Keep the tea flowing. And, oh, we got greetings from Latvia. Okay, well, special greeting to Ivan in Ireland, place I visit quite often for family reasons. The missus is Irish, in case you didn't know. So, goedenavond to, and we got Kevin McGrath, also a fellow Irish Egypt. Fantastic. I was in Dublin over Christmas, and very good it was too. I can still see people. The room is filling up. Riaz Ali says, yo, dude, what's hip and happening down in Groovetown? I have no idea. Whatever that means, Riaz, nice to hear from you. Fantastic. So, as I said, I'm going to be looking through a game by Vasily Ivanchuk. He's just a remarkable player, a remarkable person, and he came up trumps recently by winning the World Rapid Play Championship. On his day, he can beat anyone in the world, as he proved in Qatar. Roger Federer says, hello from Neasden. Greetings, Roger Federer in Neasden. Blazaro says, hi, Daniel. Do you think UK chess players suffer due to a lack of financial assistance, so they need to work to make ends meet? Yeah, working has always been a problem for English chess players, it has to be said, on many levels. And we got people from Portugal, Carlos in Portugal, Nicolas in Colombia. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, listen, folks. I'm going to start. So I'm going to go right from the very beginning of this game. I want to look at of Vasily Ivanchuk. Now, this is a very famous game. I hope that's working for everyone. Let me just straighten out my windows, and hopefully it's functioning. That's better. Okay, so this is a famous game. I make no apologies for going over this game. I'm sorry if you've... I will take questions in a second, by the way, folks. But I want to look at this game in some details. So if you could just hang back with your questions for the moment. So famous game, Vasily Ivanchuk against Garry Kasparov. And this was played in Linares 1991, which... Ivanchuk won, and this was played in the very first round. This was an absolute shocker. So Kasparov, of course, famous for his Najdorf, but Ivanchuk played bishop b5 to bypass that. Bishop b5, it's a move that I have to say I have been a fan of since I was a kid. I started playing this as a teenager, and I think it's a very good move because you complete your development on the king side extremely quickly. So you could say, well, one of the main lines is bishop d7. Move that I like to play is knight d7, but the main line is queen d7. But what's not to like? Because you've got your king castled very quickly. Black is way behind in his development on the king side. Well, king side development hasn't started at all. And you try and... One method is to get in a quick c3 and d4. There's a particular gambit line, which I used to have a lot of success with in the past, giving up this pawn. If black doesn't know this, this is highly dangerous, and it's all to do with the fact that white's king has castled and black's king is still in the middle. I've had so many quick victories with that, it's extraordinary. But other people prefer to play, for example, queen e2 has become quite trendy of late, with the idea rook d1 and d4, and getting quick pressure on the d file. This is a big favorite line of the English Grandmaster Gawain Jones. Had a lot of success with this. I can see Derek McCormack calls this the Moscow variation. Yes, some people call it the Moscow variation. Some call it the Rossolimo. I just call it the bishop b5 because I think it's a long time since, well, when it was called the Moscow variation or the Rossolimo, you know, those players played it in a very different way, or it was played in Moscow in a different way. Anyway, I call it bishop b5. But Kasparov played in the most uncompromising way, knight d7. So if you want a quieter life, then bishop d7 is the move. But knight d7 is uncompromising because, of course, it means that black's development is slightly messed up for a moment because obviously the knight blocks the bishop. But if you can gain the two bishops and make something of that in the long term, of course, this is very uncompromising. And now you can castle here, but Ivanchuk plays, I think, in a very principled way, and that's to play d4. And to try and open up the position as quickly as possible, and in that way to exploit black's lack of development on the king side. So I think d4 is an interesting move. And here, you know, the modern way of playing this is to take immediately and play a6 and just to grab the bishops. And then, you know, white has a choice. You can play with c4 or you can play with castles. Derek McCormack asks, seems a bit odd to me to give up the bishop pairs so soon into the game. Well, the point is that white tries to use his lead in development. it's all about time against a long-term advantage of the two bishops. And it's who wins out that battle. So there's already a dynamic imbalance in the position, and that's why many players like to play this with white. It's all about the initiative. If you can grab the initiative quickly, then often you can blow people off the board. And I can say from my own experience, this is a highly dangerous variation. But this is the way that most players play it these days, the big guys I'm talking about. So for example, game between Adams and Geary from the London Chess Classic went like this. And the position is reminiscent of the Najdorf, where well, with the two bishops, it should be okay for black, but you know, there is still some work to do. So this was Adams against Geary, for example. And you can see that white has a bit of a bind over d5, but with the two bishops and some pressure on the c file, it shouldn't be too bad. But the other move, which is probably more dangerous, is to play c4 in this position. That's probably more interesting. In any case, instead of this, Kasparov played knight f6, which is the other main move. Now, Ivanchuk castled, so offering the pawn on e4. By the way, a very interesting variation is to play e5 here. And in the past, this was thought to be rather innocuous because of this check and then knight e4. And then, for example, bishop d2 takes, take here and here. And, well, this shouldn't really present any great difficulties for black because white probably has to trade queens after a bit. And this is known to be nothing special. But over in the last few years in this position, and this is very interesting, you can play instead rook b1. This is an unbelievable move. If you're looking for a variation to trick your opponent, to confuse your opponent, then this is it. Rook b1. Of course, this is a computer move. And the point is that after knight takes, pawn takes, of course, the rook defends the bishop. And, well, this would be inadvisable. I have a funny feeling that the queen is going to be in mortal danger. Probably, I'm guessing queen c1, something like this, or but maybe simply just castles in this position. Just castle and blow the guy away in the middle. But going back in this position, well, e6, common move, d5. This is highly dangerous. If you're looking to trick your opponents, then this is an interesting way. Please minimize the ribbon, I've been told. Which ribbon? I think you'll have to... But do you know what? I've just about sorted out the windows. So I think I might... Oh, okay, I see what you mean. I will attempt to. Hang on. How do I do that? I'm such an expert. Not like that. Hang on. Minimize ribbon. How's that? Is that better? Better or worse? Chess improvement. Better or worse? I hope better. So here we go. Knight f6 is played. And as I said, e5 is a very interesting alternative. You can see I'm majoring on the opening this time. Castles, also dangerous. And this gives you a very good example of the kind of pitfalls that your opponent can fall into. So, for example, if knight takes e4, now this is not a good move. Rook e1, hitting the knight. Now, if d5, protecting that knight, then c4 undermines the knight's protection, and this is also very dangerous. Or if the knight goes back, white can play in quite an extraordinary way here. And again, this was played by a bishop b5 expert, Garwayne Jones, one of England's leading grandmasters. He's making rapid strides. And he used bishop b5 check for some time as one of his weapons. He recently won the Challengers Group in the Tata Steel tournament in Vachier-Lagrave, and he'll be playing in the A tournament, the main tournament next year. Very dangerous attacking player. Knight g5 is a really strong move. It's an extraordinary move. If h6, then you can simply give up your knight. And this reminds me of, King's Gambit days, except this is a very good gambit because white's king is completely safe. But black's king will struggle to get out of the middle. White just plays very simply here. Sometimes white can, aim for this kind of idea as well. Very strong move. Don't forget that a move like knight b6 could be met by that one, and that's all she wrote. So going back, this position, Kasparov did not take the pawn on e4. Instead, he took on d4. Queen takes. Now, you could play e5 here. h6 is to prevent bishop g5, which would give white some control over d5. But then c4, and white gets some Morozzi bind. Well, I think white is somewhat better in this position. But this is a question of taste. Of course, this position is also playable for black. But Kasparov plays it in a more aggressive way. Well, I don't know about aggressive, but a more uncompromising way. He played a6. Now, black's problem is that you can see immediately how the lack of development means that black has problems developing on the king side. You would like, if you had two moves and you could play g6 and bishop g7 and castles, well, black would be better. It's as simple as that. You have nice bishops. But there's a problem here. e6, well, could we play this one straight away? Let me see. Or simply knight c3. I think this is problematic with e5 coming and rook d1. But Kasparov played h6. So this is really uncompromising. He's grabbed the bishops. But of course, it means this pawn structure that his king doesn't necessarily have an easy time. If you could exchange queens here, then I think black would be very happy. But with the queens on the board, then it always means that white has some kind of attacking chances. Now, this is the first move where I think, okay, this is classic Ivanchuk. How many other players in the world would play king to h1? I can think of many players that might play it after rook g8. I can think of many players who might play a4 here or put a rook in the middle, one of these rooks. How many players would play king h1? So this is preempting any potential attack on the h file, on the g file rather. Kasparov launches the h-pawn. But also what I like about this is that, and this is again typical Ivanchuk, somehow his strategy is completely global. You know, he's looking at both sides of the board. So the h-pawn advances, and of course this needs to be stopped. If the pawn gets to h3 and forces g3, then, well, in the long term, there could potentially be problems here. So h3. Queen a5 is an interesting move, giving up that pawn, but I think probably this is... I can imagine that Kasparov would look at variations such as this, where his rooks are split. And this rook is very dangerous here, in these directions. And I can imagine that Kasparov just thought the practical chances are with white. Derek McCormack says he's the boss, but perhaps pushing the h-pawn wasted time. I don't know about that. I think let's just go back. You know, advancing this h-pawn is very much part of Black's strategy in this position with this kind of pawn structure. As said, it would be very desirable for Black to trade queens. I think it's important for Black to gain some space on the king side, actually, because where does Black have space? I mean, you could potentially look at something like bishop e7 to protect the f-pawn, and then bring the queen out to try and, well, not to d5, but perhaps to c5. To try and trade queens or something like that. But I don't know, the strategy to advance the h-pawn is pretty standard in these kind of positions. I think Black does need the space. Anyhow, let's see what happened. b4. Okay, white advancing. Oh, I'm back again. I didn't intend to do that. I hit the wrong button. That was unfortunate. Let me listen. While I've managed to get rid of the board, I simply clicked the wrong thing. My mistake. I can take a few questions. So if you've got any questions about anything, strategy, about this game, if you like, or about people were asking other stuff. Way back, people said there was a question. Nick Gatrell asks, "Good evening, Daniel. What's your view on the Robach defense?" That's very much an old school name for the modern defense. The modern is fine. It's not so popular at top levels because it simply gives away space, and these guys just care about space so much. That's why after e4, e5 or c5 are generally played, because they hate to play with a space disadvantage, because they know that in the long term they can simply be squashed off the board, and their opponents have the technique to prevent counterplay. I think at lower levels, the modern is a more successful, or Robach, if you like to call it that, the modern is completely acceptable at club level. Personally, I've never, well, I have played it a few times, but I like playing the white side of it because I love to have the space, and I think there are ways you can do it that I think if you're too ambitious with white and you play with sort of e4, d4 and f4, then you can overcook it. But if you play, for example, with e4, d4, Knight f3 and bishop c4 in that position is on the fourth move. I've always thought is a good move. But also knight f3, knight c3, bishop e2, as Karpov used to play, and play with just a little center. Also with knights e4, d4, knight c3, and g3. Just modestly hold your center. I've always liked playing those kind of positions, and I think that's very acceptable for white. But okay, this is a personal taste. Let me see. Oh, there's someone asking about, should FIDE discipline Ho Yifan? He thinks so. Do you know what? I noticed all the discussion on the channel about Yifan and about women's chess, and I thought, do you know what? I'm not going to go there because it seems to me whenever women's chess crops up, there's so much that's said, and it's very heated, and it just, there's a lot of heat generated, but not a lot of light. I mean, my view on this whole thing, this matter in Gibraltar, is very clear. I've stated that. The pairings are completely above board. I didn't quite understand why everyone leapt to conspiracy theories. You need to have a reason to be a conspirator. These pairings were completely normal, completely standard. They've been checked. They were above board. Ho Yifan was upset about, I don't know what, probably because she lost to her compatriot Zhu Wenjun, and somehow she's casting about for excuses. I don't know why. That's her problem. Let me see. What do I think of g6 in the Ruy-Lopez? I think g6 in the Ruy-Lopez is a pretty good opening variation, actually. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it does reasonably well. Bert Hamilton asks, is the Czech Benoni considered better than the modern Benoni? It's funny, in English chess circles, we used to say if something was a bit dubious, on or off the chessboard, we used to say that's a bit Czech. It's a bit Czech. Because we've always considered the Czech Benoni to be rather dubious. And the reason is this: when you play your pawns to e5 and c5, you leave the d6 pawn rather vulnerable. So if white ever breaks through, it's even worse than a King's Indian, because that d6 pawn is vulnerable. And somehow there are so many good lines against the Czech Benoni. I know it's, again, at club level, it's reasonably popular, but yeah, I don't get the Czech Benoni. It's about space again. White just has a space advantage for nothing, but also you have a very easy plan to play on, well, either side of the board, actually. Let me see. Marco Milic asks, what's the main concept of the old Indian defense? That is a big question. You put a pawn on e5 and you try to counterattack with white plays d5, rather similar to the King's Indian. Okay, I'm going to come back to the Ivanchuk game. We've had a little break. Let's see if I can find it. That would be a good start. As I managed to click off. 1 second. Okay, here we go. Hopefully we're back with the Ivanchuk game. There we are. So Chucky has just played b4. So he's played king h1, and now he's playing globally by advancing on the queen side. Now Kasparov counterattacks by playing a5. If he doesn't do this, then white will squash with a5. So at least by playing a5, Kasparov has gained control over the c5 square. But in playing b5, it means this bishop is poor. So the queen attacks, knight d2. Queen c5. As I said, if black could trade queens, he'd be very happy. But of course, Ivanchuk understands that his chances really lie in the fact that black's rooks are split, and the king doesn't really have a very safe home. Of course, it's safe in the middle, but that means the rooks are split. So keeping queens on is absolutely necessary for white, that is. In this position, white needs about 5 rooks. That's white's big dilemma. Queen swings over, but actually Ivanchuk has this under control. So, you know, he was already well prepared for this. And this is a difficult position for Kasparov already, because his counterplay has been shut down. And here, okay, this is crunch time. There is nothing wrong with f4. And then f5, you can play knight f4. And as I said before, the black's big problem here is that the rooks are split. But this is where Ivanchuk shows his artistry. He played c5. And, you know, Ivanchuk is a real artist. He likes a grand strategy, and I can understand why this appealed to him greatly. Let me see. Brandon Daniel says the black king must be looking for a white flag. Frank von Tellingen says in the poison pawn game between Tull and Portish. Is king d8, c7 an idea, and then king b8? I see. Well, for example, after f4, even if the king got to b7, I'm not sure how secure it would be, to be honest. But I have a feeling that that en route, something absolutely terrible will happen to the king. And indeed, something like c5. I'm going to carry on with the game. I think it would be too slow. So c5. Now, this is a tremendous move. If b takes, then knight c4 hits this pawn, which looks already terrible. Kasparov took with the rook. I mean, this is possibly a better move. But it still looks miserable for black. I think in practical terms, white is doing extremely well here. Just because it's very hard for black to scrape out of this situation. And white has a lot of interesting possibilities. You know, maybe e5 is coming, maybe f5. Perhaps simply attacking on the d file. Rook takes c5 played. Knight c4, and now you can see. Well, Kasparov, in taking with the rook, is hoping to somehow join his colleague over here. I think it's interesting that actually Kasparov took with the rook, even though this is probably hopeless. Well, it is hopeless because b6 is dropping. But he's desperate for activity. Whereas, you know, other players might be thinking, well, I think I can perhaps survive by defending passively. But Kasparov is the kind of player that absolutely hates passive defense. He might have even just seen this possibility and thought, well, this looks absolutely hopeless because the rooks are split. just seems very, very unpleasant. And then the rook comes over. I mean, this is also, yeah, I mean, this looks absolutely horrible. Both these pawns threatened. I think in practical terms, this is just very, very difficult. So Kasparov decided to play with a rook, but this is completely lost now because this rook really doesn't join in. They don't join together. F5. Okay, so Kasparov's still trying to stir things up, and it's fantastic the way Ivanchuk dealt with this. In this position, knight c8 is a winning move. It's completely winning. It hits the bishop. After the bishop drops, then you can simply push this pawn. And there's no decent defense to this, actually. It's quite funny. But I just find it very interesting that Ivanchuk played with g4. And this shows his artistry. And I love it, the way that he finally manages to use this rook on g1 in an aggressive way. It was just defending passively. If h takes g3, you take with the queen. Obviously, there's a problem here. So the king steps up. Now take care, because that will be check and mate. But instead, very simple winning move, queen c3, check. And then, well, if you want to, well, knight d5 is probably quite good. If I'm stuck for a move, I'll take the rook, which seems to be the end of the line. Okay, let's go back. So I'm afraid taking wouldn't be too good. But then again, that means the rook is embarrassed. Now knight c8. But this is lost now. And again, this is so beautiful by Ivanchuk. He's not concentrating on the b pawn. Of course, advancing the b pawn would allow the bishop into the game, but isn't this fantastic that, you know, he's got his pieces on the 8th rank. It's all about cramping black. And the queen looks in this direction, looks at the bishop, and this is absolutely superb. And Ivanchuk succeeds in keeping Kasparov in the box. Now, take care about this move, but no problem. F5. And again, take care of queen e3, but we've still got this one in the box. And after this one, okay, take care here, but g4 just snuffs out any counterplay. I mean, look at black's pieces. Look at black's pieces. Terrible. When did Kasparov lose a game like this? I mean, this is complete humiliation. So the knight steps up, hits the queen. Queen check and rook h4. And here, Kasparov resigned. You know, I think it might have been gentlemanly to actually allow a checkmate. But anyway, Kasparov gave up the ghost here. Now that is a humiliating final position. As I said, when did Kasparov lose a game like that? Kasparov used to lose occasionally, but not like that. That is quite extraordinary. So let me just click out of that. One second, folks. Oh, are we back again? Have I managed to mess up? Hopefully we're back again. There we are. Good. Right, let me take some questions. Frank Funtellingen asks, Ivanchuk seems to belong to a great line of players that never quite made it. I assume you mean to the very top, like Korchnoi. What would you say is the main reason for him not making it? Well, I think nerves, possibly. A kind of lack of common sense. I mean, the guy is sort of on another planet. I mean, he's an amazing man. But he certainly, sometimes he just seems to have his head in the clouds. He's capable of beating any player in the world. But sometimes, for example, in Gibraltar, he lost a game simply because he forgot to write down one move, so he lost on time in the 40th move. He thought he'd made the time control. It's that kind of thing. Or sometimes, he'll play, he plays so many different openings, and sometimes he's a bit too artistic. I think he needs, sometimes you feel he should specialize in one particular thing, one particular opening, for example. But, he's very special. Boyan Maximovich asks, do you think that Ivanchuk is a genius? He's a genius on the chessboard. Yeah, I think so. Kasparov, by the way, said that. Kasparov said without hesitation, yeah, he's a genius. And, he's a remarkable human being. He really is. But he can also lose very easily. Let me come back. Daniela Marioni asks, do you think that a player with 2800 ELO plays better chess than a player with the same rating 20 years ago? Well, it seems to me there's been a bit of rating inflation. Let me think. Well, I'm not quite sure about the ELO rating system, about inflation. I'm not an expert on that. What I would say is I think the top players of today are more professional than 20 years ago. I think there has been an increase in knowledge in the chess world because it's become more professional. And I mean, I don't like comparing players from different ages, because obviously if you're the top 50 years ago, well, you had no one else to beat. You're only as good as the players opposite you. So I hate to compare the top players. But the game is more professional. So players work harder than ever before. Engine Kid 88 asks, the Telegraph posted an article a few days ago, chess players need checking for drugs, scientists say. Your thoughts? Well, in FIDE events, there is drug testing, actually. That's being done already. So, yeah, I think people are up for it. I think computer cheating is more of an issue. I mean, I'm not qualified medically to say whether some drugs can help you. To be honest, I doubt it. I think, maybe beta blockers can help with nerves or something like that. But I think computer cheating is potentially more of a problem, not amongst the top players, but, I think in the top competitions, not only there is drugs testing goes on, but also, people are very, very aware of potential for computer cheating, and the players are tested, and, I think they have it in hand. Sorry. Bharadwaj Ralabandi asks, is there any opening like the London system from the black side? Very solid and kind of a system. Well, it's less easy, but I would say yes, in a sense. D4, D5 is very solid. Play the Queen's Gambit with black. So this is an opening system I recommend that cuts out a lot of nonsense, and you can play it by understanding strategy. So if you're looking for a good opening against D4, where, of course, it always helps to know some opening theory, but you can play it with strategic knowledge only, I would strongly recommend D4, D5, and playing the Queen's Gambit as black, and playing against the Catalan as well. Same thing, D4, D5, and you play with E6 and Knight F6 and Bishop E7, basically. Dario Martina Hernandez asked, do you think the London system is playable at the top level? Yeah, sure. People are playing the London system at the top level nowadays because it's a kind of anti-computer variation, because you can play it on strategy. I mean, it's not the most testing for black, but it's an anti-computer system. Jules on YouTube asks, why does Ivanchuk like playing checkers so much? Why not? Why not? You can't. It's because checkers, or as we say in English, drafts, or in German, Damen, Dame, in other languages, is a very, very deep game. Why not? Blazaro asks, what's the largest world championship payout? I have no idea. I have no idea. Kevin McGrath asks, is there much money in professional chess if you're not among the elite top 20? Well, it depends what you mean by a lot of money. I would say it's all about lifestyle. And yeah, look at the quality of these threads. Oh, this is no cheap cloth, Kevin. Come on. Mike Salpi asked, do you intend to cover more tournaments per year? Well, I cover lots of tournaments every year. So, yeah, absolutely, I intend to cover more tournaments. I'm not quite sure what the next one is. Possibly, I mean, maybe the Zurich Chess Challenge. I'm going to be the official commentator there. So I might have time to post something from there. I might do something beforehand. But actually, my next, I think I need to check the result of the poll. My patrons on patreon.com voted on my next theme, which I'm going to cover on the channel. And it's going to be, I need to check it, but I think it's going to be Fischer's, some of Fischer's games is going to be my next theme on the channel. But many people were vociferously arguing for Ivanchuk's best games, which is why I thought I would cover one in my Hangout just to satisfy those people that didn't win the poll. But yeah, and I should just say, if you want to contribute to this channel and to make more of these Hangouts possible, then do please donate on patreon.com. I'm just going to put the address in now. Wait a second. There we go. I put it in there. Basically, the reason I'm able to spend the time on these Hangouts is because people have donated on patreon.com. So if you want to contribute to a small monthly payment or even a large monthly payment, that'd be lovely, then please go to patreon.com and enjoy the rewards as well. They get extra videos, for example, and they're able to vote on future topics on the channel. Engine Kid 88 asks, Daniel, Chessbase ran an article yesterday that said former chess champion checkmates Donald Trump. Do you think Chessbase should be making political statements? Is that a political statement? I don't know. What Chessbase News tries to do is to find bits of color to make chess news more interesting. You can agree or disagree with it if it's up to you. Sandy Ruxton asks, just being nosy, but what does the poster behind you say? This is a poster from a tournament I played in the Soviet Union in 1985 in Yurmala. And of course it's in Russian, and it says Международный шахматный турнир, international chess tournament. And yeah, the first tournament I played in the Soviet Union in 1985, and my name is up there amongst the participants, and also next to my name is the name of Mikhail Tal, who was also playing in the tournament, which is why the poster's up there. Even though he defeated me in that game, I'm very proud to say that I participated in the same tournament as him. Ivan asks, any thoughts on the Black Knight's Tango, d4, knight of 96 versus the King's Indian? You know, it's an interesting opening, and I think it's good to have a kind of second string to throw in. And it can be a surprising opening as well. I mean, on the top level, I don't think it's brilliant, but at club level, I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good surprise weapon, you know. It's good to have a couple of strings, so play the King's Indian, throw in the Tango as well, you know, why not? Guest informant asks, why do you play chess? Can you articulate the appeal of chess? I think this is a really interesting question. The game as you experience it and the game as it is portrayed are completely different. Why do I play chess? Well, I tell you what I like about chess. You know, this is very personal. You know, people will say why they like chess different ways. I mean, I enjoy the history of chess. I enjoy the culture of chess. Those things appeal to me. When I'm playing chess, I like that feeling that time disappears so that you are just focusing on one thing with great intensity. And you're, I suppose, in common jargon, you're in the zone. I think psychologists call it, there's a flow. And that's very appealing. Why else do I like chess? I like the creativity. I like it that you can express yourself. You know, as Marcel Duchamp said, not all artists are chess players, but all chess players are artists. You can express yourself, whatever level you play at, you can express yourself. And for me, that's very important. I like to express myself. I like to express my personality, my thoughts, and show my creativity, not just in chess, but in other things as well. Not everyone has the privilege or is able to do that. And I think as a chess player, you know, we can all do that. I hope that answers your question to some extent. But as I said, this is very personal. People have different reasons why they're playing chess, why they play chess. Let me see. Thank you, Douglas Squirrel. Bharadwaj Ralabandi has asked, how do intermediate players improve their endgame? My coach is asking me to solve the whole of ECE. Is that an endgame? Do you know, sounds to me like your coach is a bit of a hard taskmaster. You know, I think focus on the process, you know, little by little. We improve in little steps. That's what I would say. Peter Smythe asks, yeah, do you do these consistently, or do you mean regularly? These Hangouts are monthly. And as I said, I'm only able to do these because the patrons I have on patreon.com. Thank you, Blazero, for contributing. Derek McCormack asks, I'm switching from E4 to D4. Is it worth all the work? It's completely up to you. Yes, Bharadwaj Ralabandi, EC, Encyclopedia of Chess Endings. Yeah, listen, for a coach just to say, learn it and look at the whole book, that, you know, has he ever done that? Doubt it. Little by little, just do a few at a time. Sandy Ruxton says, my reason for playing is I just got to ECF 199 at age 57. Congratulations. How the hell do I get over 200? Focus on the process. Just keep going. But little by little, make improvements. Just keep working at the game and keep playing, basically, and see what happens. By the way, just before we go, I'm just going to show you a little coincidence. Very, very quickly. I've just got time for this. So 1 second, guys. I'm just going to switch to a board. So 1 moment, please. This was a game between... Oh, are we there yet? Yeah, I think we're there. This is a game between Vasily Ivanchuk and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, played in 2012. Now, I'm going to zip through this opening very, very quickly. It's a fascinating game. So played in the Olympiad in 2012, not so long ago. But Ivanchuk takes on Maxime's Najdorf. You might notice a similarity in the pawn structure between this game and the the Kasparov game. There we go, the h-pawn advancing down the board, and h3, blocking that h-pawn. Now Maxime provokes knight d5, the classic Sicilian sacrifice. And the problem is the king, of course, that it's not particularly safe on the queen side and not particularly safe on the king side. So, for example, here, then this is very, very dangerous. And the other problem is that once the e6 pawn has disappeared, then this knight lands on a beautiful square. And Ivanchuk plays it very simply. He trades off the bishop, and that means he can now double on the e-file. It's obvious that white has great compensation here. Now, this is a very interesting moment. White can simply take here. And good winning chances. But again, what does Ivanchuk, the artist, do? he attacks down the G file. And this, of course, reminds me of the Kasparov game. There are great similarities. G3, it's an extraordinary move. How many players would risk opening up their king when they do have a very safe alternative in taking on E7? But our Ivanchuk, he's an artist. G3, watch what happens. If H takes G3, then suddenly there is a devastating attack down the G file. And you take that rook. And the game ended like this: knight d4, e7. Of course, Ivanchuk is a brilliant calculator. And he would have had to have worked this out before going in for this. You know, his king is a little bit exposed, but he's calculated that actually he can get the king, and the game ended like this. And a few more checks. He gets there like this, boom, boom, and that was the end of that. So there we go. I just thought I'd show you that position. G3. Not many top players would play G3. Not many top players would bother calculating. They would just take that bishop. But Ivanchuk is a special guy. Okay, let's get back to the board. It gets back to the camera, rather. Where are we? Let me see. Any other questions before I go? I can see there are a lot of people asking stuff. Guest informant says ECF 200 is around 2150. No, ECF 200 is 2200. Exactly. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I'm over my hour. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This will be posted on the channel straight away. So if you want to go back and look at that Ivanchuk game, then please do. And in particular, I hope that you enjoyed the detailed coverage of the opening, as I have time to do it during this hour. And as I said, if you feel like contributing to the channel, we will be most grateful. It's not just me working on the Power Play Chess channel, but my tech partner, Pascal. You can see him on the channel introduction. So there's two of us working on this, and it'll be fantastic if we could break even at some moment for the effort that we put in. So patreon.com, Power Play Chess. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. See you soon.